The agenda, if hopefully most of you've got the agenda in front of you. If not, we'll go through it quite quickly. Obviously, the first one is welcome to everyone and introductions. I've sort of half done introductions, but we will come back to that later on in the morning, if that's okay. We have Matt Copeland joining us on a pre-recorded video that he had to redo late yesterday afternoon because of the announcement by the government this week. So Matt will be giving you an overview of NEA's policy work and also the recent sort of developments or the announcement by the government. Any questions or comments, please put in the comments box. We will pick up, my colleagues Brian and Nina will pick up and let me flag them up to me if we need to address. We'll address that as the day goes on. We then sort of swiftly followed by Connected Homes for Health report by Jamie Lee, who's one of our colleagues in the research team. Again, it's a pre-record. She's not available today. She's now on maternity leave. Helen Stockton, the research manager, will be joining us to answer any questions or comments on it. The reason why we've included Connecting Homes for the Health report, for those of you who attended fuel poverty forums in the past, you will have heard Jamie speak about an initial report. The reason why we're doing the final report or sharing the final report, we're really pleased on the outcomes of this. Without giving too much away, it sort of just confirms what I think everyone in the room already knows, and it is hopefully going to be a useful tool to be used going forward to put additional pressure on the government and Ofgem with regards to support for organisations, particularly with vulnerable people. And if our timings are right, and if people who attend these forums regularly will know that timings sometimes go out the window. That hopefully is not the case today. We have Amanda Megson, who's the Development Officer for Energy Savings Trust, joining us today, which I'm really pleased with, and the timing couldn't have been better. She's going to talk about the work that EST Energy Savings Trust are doing in relation to the COVID-19 crisis fund. Just a little bit of a tease. Within the slides, or when Amanda does her presentation, she actually uses 2 C words, and they're not, trust me on this one, they're not swear words. They're very nice words. Please take note of what Amanda's going to say about these 2 C words and act upon it if you don't mind. That's that bit. We then have Suzanne Barningham, who's the Energy Works Manager from Groundwork. I think most of you who attend the forum regularly will know Suzanne is a regular contributor to our forums. We have allowed her 10 minutes, whether that works or not, if everyone knows Suzanne, but she has promised me she will keep to 10 minutes. The reason why I've asked Suzanne along, we have a workshop at 11:05 with a virtual comfort break. The workshop is going to be aimed at what's been happening over the last 3 months. Now, I always find it when I'm on the other side of the table with workshops, you get put a lot of questions in front of you, and especially if they're from our policy team, you sometimes look at it and think, I don't know how to start. The idea of inviting Suzanne along just before we break for the workshops is I've given her a brief on the 3 questions that hopefully she will cover, and it will I'm hoping it will sort of kickstart the workshop or give you a better idea or understanding as what we're looking for from the workshops. So again, within the workshops, there are 3 hopefully simple questions. First one is, again, what's been the main challenges of your organisation in regards to what's happened over these last 3 or 4 months? The second question is about, have you come across any best practice or are the things that you found that are working, in particular with regard to vulnerable customers? And then the third question is there any way that NEA can work with organisations or support and help you in any way? So that's that. What we're hoping, as I say, we've done a little bit of a run round through the room, but hopefully we've allocated enough time within this forum, within the about 11:30 with the feedback and questions, where there will be opportunity, obviously, for the feedback from the workshops, but then an additional opportunity to sort of provide any further information or share with us anything that your organisations are doing that we may have missed. Is that okay with everyone? There's a couple of nods, thank you. Again, at this point in time with a forum, in a real forum, we would do the housekeeping rules. Now, obviously, that doesn't apply because I'm assuming that most of you know where the toilets are. Yeah, that's fine. When we get to our virtual coffee break, once again, I think you should be all aware where the kettle is based in your room. And the other one is usually about a fire drill. Now, obviously, we're not having a fire drill, but if you do an alarm in the background, please don't worry about it. It'll be my teenage daughter burning the toast again, right? So that will be that. With regards to the virtual one, the introduction is sort of give you a few tips of the etiquette is a word that's being used in my brief that's being given to me with regard to Zoom. Most of you will be kept on mute. Certainly during the pre-recorded presentations and Amanda's presentation. However, during these presentations, you are more than welcome to put a comment in the chat box, and we will pick up as the morning goes along and we will respond to them. Again, with regards to the breakout, the feedback and questions, the opportunity, so we'll open the room and hopefully unmute most of this. Well, we will unmute you. Again, I say I've done a little bit of a run around, but just to give you the flavour of the organisations in the room. And again, when we go out into the breakout rooms, you will have the opportunity to network with the people in your breakout. And again, a further networking or sharing of ideas or information in our feedback. So some of the organisations we have with us, we've got Care Network, Calderdale Sitting Device Bureau, Sitting Device from Carlisle and Eden, Sitting Device Manchester, Clarion Housing Group, Energy Projects Plus, Groundwork, Johnny Johnson Housing, Knowsley Council, Local Energy Northwest, Manchester, Stacey Cohen. It's not from Manchester City Council, I think it's from One Manchester. Matilda's Planet, Next Gen Futures, Northwoods Housing, Oldham Council, One Manchester, Riverside, Salford City Council, Scottish Power, I think, are joining us, Sefton Council, Switchy, Jane Elliott, and also Union Technical. Is that okay with everyone? We hope that this forum is as useful, as informative as the real forums. We have tried our best. I say we have two pre-recorded from Matt Copeland, our policy manager, and also from Jamie, who's our research person. Again, we've got Amanda. I say we will give the opportunity by opening the room once we've done the breakouts for people to join in and sort of give a better introduction of themselves. Is that okay? Right. Again, we have the comments button. Everyone okay with the comments button on the bottom of the screen with the chat? So at any point during the morning, you can put a comment or a question to us, to either of the any of the speakers, and we will address that as the morning goes on. When we get to opening the room, there is a function on the participants list where you can put a hand up, and I will endeavour to do my level best to bring in as many people into the room or give an opportunity to speak. Is that okay? Right, so we'll get to the main crux of the forum. We'll be starting with Matt Copeland, who's going to give an overview of NEA's work over the last few months relating to the COVID. He has also included our thoughts on the announcement from the government that have been released this week. So again, Brian, if you would kindly start the Matt. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the NEA Summer Forum 2020 Policy Update. Today I'm going to take you through some policy developments that have happened recently. Before I get to that, you might be wondering how our work is being shaped by the pandemic, as COVID-19 has had such a profound impact on all of our lives, but also the policy landscape. We've outlined the impact in our recent webinar, which you can watch there, which also has input from Citizens Advice and Bayes and Energy UK. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth a watch, so I'd encourage you to click through. Okay, on to the policy update and some recent highlights. So we're going to talk today about our campaign for a green economic recovery, our work surrounding the impacts of COVID-19, our campaign for the warm home discount to be extended, some news on the prepayment cap and updates on Ofgem's work on South Disconnection, and then a little bit on water poverty at the end. So firstly, the most exciting bit, our campaign for a green economic recovery. We joined with many other organisations in calling for the economic recovery package to be a green one, centred around support for energy efficiency. And our role there was really not just from energy efficiency, but to ensure that there was a focus on low-income, fuel-poor households in any economic recovery. Dozens of organisations have released reports, written to government, briefed the press, all sorts of public affairs-y type things to encourage such a scheme that creates thousands of jobs, reduces fuel poverty, tackles health inequalities, tackles regional inequalities, everything that government is looking for. We helped contribute to several of those. Many of you may have been involved in letters or reports and mounted quite a lot of pressure on Downing Street over the past month or so. The result of that is success. The government has announced a Green Home Grant Scheme, and whilst we don't know too much about that at the moment, I've just bulleted there what we do know. So there'll be £2 billion overall for that scheme. And that scheme comes in the form of voucher grants. So for low-income households, there will be vouchers up to £10,000 at no cost to the householder. For other households, it'll be £5,000, with the government contributing £2 for every £1 the householder puts in. We expect half of the money to go towards the low-income side of things. That was suggested by the Business Secretary. Haven't had that confirmed as of yet. But we think that is a pretty good base assumption at the moment. This is a huge success for NEA. We're incredibly proud of it. We're especially proud of the fact that the grants will come at no cost to the householder. If they are classed as low income, that is something that we've heavily campaigned for, and we believe we moved the dial quite significantly on that particular point. I'd love to talk about this all day and sort of celebrate with you, but there's lots to get through and not enough time, so I'm going to have to move on. But yeah, this is certainly the biggest success we've had since I joined NEA. Something else that we've been doing over the past few months, and you may have seen our work on this, is looking at the impact of COVID-19 and how households have been affected by it. We've released 2 papers looking at impacts, one on addressing the impacts of the social distancing on energy consumers, where we looked at things like what support was available, what supports being accessed and able to, was it accessible, and then proposed some remedies for it. We then released a paper looking at debt during COVID-19 called The Gathering Storm, and that looked at the scale of the mounting debt in energy sector, but also the water sector as well, and included some proposals to firstly help households to ensure that they can pay the debt with sort of debt matching or payment matching schemes, but secondly make paying easier in terms of ensuring that suppliers weren't unfairly chasing debt. Additionally, we're running this year's fuel poverty monitor on the impacts of COVID-19 on fuel poor households. That's been collecting information from our staff, from many of you, through our call for evidence, and also through other stakeholders such as Westminster and the devolved governments, through interviews, and that will report back later this year in approximately September with some initial findings. Of course, it can only be very initial because it's very early, relatively speaking, and we'll continue to try and capture evidence on this, but we think it will be really apt to understand some deficiencies, some things that went well in the first lockdown, so ahead of a potential second lockdown, we know what could be done better. Onto all home discount. So throughout the last 6 months, you'd have heard me rabbiting along about this many times, I guess, but we've been campaigning for the warm home discount to be extended and expanded. So we've partnered up with this fabulous organisation called Fair by Design, and we released a report with them outlining the need for extending and expanding the warm home discount. And many of you would have been involved in this campaign. We wrote to the Minister along with 60 other signatories, asking for clarity on the immediate future of the scheme, but also some clarity on their plans with looking into the future. We think that a 1-year extension at this point would be apt, keeping the scheme as it is, but also that the government need to consider the longer term design of the scheme to make sure that more people can receive payments automatically, as opposed to the application procedure that happens at the moment, where it's a bit of a lottery. We've also engaged more broadly with Parliament, encouraging Conservative MPs to put pressure on BEIS to provide urgent clarity, and we've also asked and succeeded in getting the relevant minister in Wales, the Welsh Government, to write to Westminster as well. So quite a lot of stuff going on here, and we're relatively confident we'll get this. It's just about maintaining that pressure. Next, Ofgem's work, and there's been 2 main bits of work as far as we're concerned over the past few months. Firstly, the continuation of the prepayment price cap. It's almost certain that this will now continue after the end of this year, when the current cap is due to end. So, as you may remember, the current prepayment price cap is distinct from the broader cap. It's one that the CMA brought in when they did their energy market investigation because of detriment specifically to prepayment customers. So we've argued that that cap is very different to the default tariff price cap, and should be sort of kept separate, but Ofgem have decided that it will roll it into it, mainly to ensure that the costs of continuing price caps aren't exceeding the benefits. Broadly, this is good. We would have preferred them to be separate, but this still provides protection for prepayment customers, and it means that 4 million households who do have a prepayment meter and are on standard variable tariffs will continue to receive price protection for the foreseeable future, and won't see big increases in their prices coming out of winter. Additionally to that, Ofgem have released their final consultations on proposals to help households that self-disconnect. Suppliers, if they follow through with the proposals in that consultation, which we expect them to, suppliers will have to monitor self-disconnection, so they'll have to understand which of their customers are self-disconnecting. All suppliers will have to offer emergency and friendly credit. Most do at the moment, all do, and all have to use ability to pay principles. All of this will be in licence conditions, so will therefore be enforceable. And we think that whilst this is stretching for suppliers, this isn't an easy task for them to do. Specifically, the monitoring side of things will be difficult for them to do. This is really welcome, and not only is it good for those customers who are on legacy prepay, because it offers them greater level of protection, but also because this is difficult and expensive for suppliers to do, they will be encouraged financially to ensure that prepayment customers are prioritised in terms of getting smart meters, which is a good thing. The benefits of having a smart meter are much higher for prepayment customers than others. So overall, these are fantastic proposals and we can get right behind them. Lastly, a bit of stuff on our water poverty work. My colleague Jess has published a new report on the consistency of social tariffs in the water sector, and there's 3 recommendations in that report. One, that government should conduct a thorough review of social tariff guidance and in consultation with water companies and stakeholders to make this report fairer for all. Secondly, there should be particular consideration given to alternative options for funding social tariff schemes. At the moment, it's a sort of cross-subsidy where some of their customers pay for others to receive a lower tariff. We think there should be different ways of doing that, or considered at least. And then thirdly, government should prescribe some core eligibility criteria, so there's more consistency across different water companies of who receives this level of support, because at the moment it's a bit of a postcode lottery. Yeah, so that's that water report.
Thanks for that. There's a couple of things. I have been monitoring the comments as best I can. I'm expecting where he referred to about the prepayment, that possibly this may come out in the workshops, a bit more reaction to what's happening with prepayment customers at the moment. With regard to the water poverty, and it's not because Carol is sitting in front of me from United Utilities, I think we all know around the Northwest, United, if they've attended their conferences over the last couple of years, United Utilities, in my personal opinion, ahead of the game on this one with regard to other. So I think that we're good in the Northwest with the support that the involvement of United Utilities with us. So thanks for that one. Moving swiftly on, Helen Stockton has joined us, who's our research manager. Again, we're going to go into Jamie's presentation. Jamie's presentation is a follow-up to initial findings she gave on this project. We've now issued the final report. The report is available that you can refer to. Again, we are really pleased about this because, again, I said earlier on, this does confirm what everyone in the room has been saying for a long time and will back up us organisations going forward. So again, we'll go into Jamie's presentation now, if that's okay. Again, if there's any comments or questions, please ask and Ellen will address. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Lee Rosenborough, Senior Research and Policy Officer at NEA, and I'm here today to highlight some of the impacts achieved and lessons learned as a result of our Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project. Before I go any further, I'd like to share Steve's story with you. Steve is a disabled war veteran. He suffers from PTSD. He lives along with his dog, Baxter, whom he considers to be his closest friend in the world. Steve had to leave his job due to ill health. His income was drastically reduced and he had fallen into arrears with his mortgage payments. He was in dispute with the Ministry of Defence over the calculation of his war pension and he was living on universal credit. He had one inefficient storage heater in the living room and 2 portable electric heaters. He could not afford to pay his energy bills. He generally found himself sitting in the dark and cold at home. He would wear a pair of leather gloves to try and keep his hands warm, but that wasn't enough to prevent the pain creeping into his joints and causing him great discomfort. But he preferred to suffer the pain in his hands than to risk falling further into fuel debt. At one point, his universal credit payments were temporarily stopped. For days, he did not eat, but drank only water. Steve felt incredibly ashamed of the circumstances in which he found himself, and had progressively cut off contact with friends and family as a result. He did not want them to see him struggling and was too proud to stomach the thought of their pity or their offers of help. Feeling cold, hungry and isolated made it harder for him to cope with the symptoms of his PTSD. The only person he ever really saw was his dad, who was suffering from a terminal illness and lived nearby. 1 year after participating in the Connecting Homes for Health scheme, Steve is transformed. He has an efficient and fully working heating and hot water system and knows that he can stay warm when he needs it. Despite using his heating system more, his energy costs have reduced so much that he is now able to save money each month. He even has £500 in his savings account. He can afford to buy the food he wants and not just the bare minimum. He has even had help in securing a manageable repayment plan with his energy supplier and is gradually clearing the fuel debt that he had accrued before signing up to the scheme. His leather gloves are no longer needed when he's at home. His hands do not hurt anymore, and he can take regular hot baths to further help manage his joint pain. He feels financially independent and happy. Because he no longer feels hungry and cold, he feels as though he is in a better place mentally to be able to deal with the symptoms of his PTSD. His voice now sounds bright and upbeat, whereas before he sounded sad and forlorn and was prone to tears. He says that letting the NEA advisor into his home that day was the best thing that he has ever done. The scheme, he says, has transformed his life. It has given him health and financial independence and given him hope once again. The Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project aimed to test and measure the impact of applying health-based eligibility criteria to the provision of free gas grid connections funded through the Fuel Poor Network Extension Scheme and free first-time gas central heating measures alongside tailored energy efficiency advice and support funded through warm home discount industry initiatives on the health and well-being of vulnerable residents who are in or at risk of fuel poverty and at risk from cold-related ill health. The research element of the project was funded by Northern Gas Networks. The concept of proportionate universalism put forward by Michael Marmot argues that actions to tackle health inequalities need to be proportionate to the level of disadvantage experienced by different groups in society, i.e., the most vulnerable will need additional support. A mapping exercise was therefore designed and carried out for County Durham and Sunderland. This involved identifying GP practices within the two local authority areas that were showing a high prevalence of multiple cold-related ill health indicators according to the Quality Outcomes Framework, using a weighted ranking system. These were then overlapped with the Index of Multiple Deprivation rank, along with additional deprivation indicators and fuel poverty prevalence at ward level in order to give each GP practice catchment area an overall health, deprivation, fuel poverty risk score. Postcodes falling within a 2-mile radius of each of the highest scoring practices were identified and given to NGN, who carried out an additional layer of mapping to identify which properties were off gas. A comprehensive desk-based evidence review was carried out to understand the relationship between cold homes and ill health and to inform development of the eligibility criteria for the scheme. The full review can be accessed on our website. The pilot needed to balance narrow eligibility requirements to capture the most vulnerable, whilst allowing for some flexibility to capture other households in need. So I'd now like to touch on some of the impacts that were achieved for households, starting with the impact on their home heating and control experiences. Before receiving support, 76% of participants were not satisfied with the temperature in their home. 1 year after, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. Before, 59% were not satisfied with how easy their heating system was to use. Within a year, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. 74% were not satisfied with the amount of control they had over their heating before receiving support, but again, 100% were either satisfied or very satisfied afterwards. While 64% were not satisfied with how well their house kept the heating pre-intervention, post-intervention, 86% were satisfied. The experience of subjective fuel poverty was also significantly reduced amongst participants. Before receiving support, 93% of households were in subjective fuel poverty. Within a year, this had reduced to 5%, meaning that 95% of participating households were not in subjective fuel poverty after receiving support. 1 year on, 100% of participants said they were satisfied with the new gas central heating system. It was also now easier for 90% and cheaper for 68% to heat enough hot water for their needs, and 35% use more hot water than they did before. 91% of those who had solid fuel systems before said that heating water in the summer no longer made their homes too hot. The experience of Carolyn and Lynette highlights the importance of having access to affordable and reliable hot water. Carolyn lives with her teenage daughter, Lynette. Carolyn is partially sighted and suffers from multiple health conditions. She is also the primary carer for Lynette, who has chronic bronchitis and asthma and who suffers from chronic skin and joint conditions. The pair live in a private rented, semi-detached home. Before, the heating system did not work and would constantly trip out the electricity. It was extremely inefficient and costly to run. Nevertheless, she had to have it turned on all the time to make sure the house could be warm enough for Lynette. As a result, she was falling deeper and deeper into fuel debt. The immersion heater did not work well, and Carolyn struggled to fill a bath with hot water at any one time. When she did want hot water, she had to wait for up to 2 hours. This made it practically impossible for Lynette to use hot water to manage her joint and skin conditions in the way that she needed. When they wanted to bathe, they had to go to her grandmother or her aunt's home instead. When things got really bad, Carolyn would borrow money from her sister to cover the cost of her energy bill. The home that Carolyn had envisioned became in her mind an unsanitary place which represented danger, discomfort, and a risk to her own health and that of her daughter. 1 year on, and Carolyn and Lynette now have access to a working central heating system which provides them with as much heating and hot water as they need without having to worry about the cost. Their energy is cheaper, and they have succeeded in having some of their outstanding fuel debt written off. Lynette is able to have as many hot baths as her condition requires, and her respiratory symptoms are less severe when she is warm at home. Carolyn is now pleased that she doesn't have to worry about keeping the whole house warm all day. She feels relieved that Lynette now has access to a comfortable environment in which she can be homeschooled without risking a worsening of her respiratory illness. They've been able to decorate and take pride in the beautiful home which they've been able to create. Carolyn has told her landlord that, should they decide to sell the property, she'd be keen to have first refusal. This is the place where she wants to live and where she wants to stay. It is her home. Indeed, the project either made energy bills more affordable or did not increase bills for a large proportion of participant households. Before, for example, 70% had found it hard to afford their energy bills. After, 79% found it easy. Before, 35% felt that their energy bills were manageable, but this increased to 77% afterwards. Similarly, whereas before only 34% felt their household budget was manageable, afterwards 67% felt so. The intervention also had an impact on the self-reported physical and mental health and well-being of participant households. For example, before intervention, 14% rated their physical health as either good or very good. Afterwards, 74% did so. Before, 37% rated mental health as good or very good. Afterwards, 79% did so. Before, 83% said their physical health was affected by being cold at home. Afterwards, only 7% felt that this was the case. Similarly, before, 48% had said that their mental health was affected by being cold at home. Afterwards, only 5% felt so. And finally, whereas before intervention, 73% said that their ability to cope with an existing illness was affected by being cold at home, only 5% said that this was the case afterwards. Let's take a look at May's story. May is retired and suffers from COPD. At the point at which she signed up for the scheme, her lung capacity was at 39% and she would be constantly wheezing and struggling for breath. May previously had a solid fuel heating system in her home, which she hated. It was difficult to manage and she struggled to fetch the fuel she needed from the outside store due to her breathing. She was convinced that the ash and the dust created by the system was contributing to her respiratory illness and helping to make her symptoms worse. Not only that, but it made her reluctant to have her young grandchildren over to visit. She worried that 2 toddlers running around the living room were in danger of suffering serious burns and injuries should they fall over near or get too close to the fire that was in the middle of the room. 1 year after, and her gas central heating system has been installed, and May was saving between £80 and £90 a month on her fuel bills. Not only did this mean that she could now afford to buy more food and other essentials, but also that she could allow herself a little treat every now and then. She was finally able to put money into her savings account each month, which made her feel content and secure. Her lung capacity had increased over the period of a year from 39% to 50%. When her doctor expressed surprise and pleasure at the improvement and asked her if anything had changed, she said that she told him that it had been down to her new gas central heating system. She said that she was warmer and that the system was much cleaner, and she no longer felt that she was breathing in harmful substances while she was at home. She did not have to struggle to bring fuel in anymore and could instead just enjoy the warmth and the financial savings. Her children had noticed that her chest no longer made a constant rattling noise and that her pallor had improved. She no longer looked grey. Furthermore, she'd been able to spend more time with her young grandchildren, as she was now confident that they would not hurt themselves when playing in her living room. Instead of worrying about the dangers that her home might represent, she could simply enjoy being with her family. May felt as though the scheme had changed her life for the better and likened it to having won the lottery. Taken together, these results show that the application of the health-based and financial eligibility criteria and targeting mechanisms to the project was successfully able to reduce the experience of health and other social inequalities in extremely vulnerable households. However, the delivery pathways developed and enacted during the delivery phase of the project were also key in enabling such results to be achieved. Ultimately, preliminary mapping is important to identify target communities or areas, but that should be the start and not the end point of a successful recruitment strategy, especially when it comes to engaging and retaining the participation of extremely vulnerable clients. The reality is much more complex and much more expensive to deliver. In the case of this project, it meant repeated letters, phone calls, text messages, face-to-face home visits, door knocking, private and social landlord liaison. It also meant managing communications with local councils and parish councils and taking on board the processing of FPNES paperwork. Not only that, it meant organising and carrying out house clearances and storage space, coordinating the provision of small measures such as carpets and curtains, identifying and booking adequate interpretation services, and making onward referrals to other agencies able to provide additional support for multiple vulnerabilities. Ultimately, it's about fully understanding individual household situations and needs. At times, the application of a small crisis fund meant that the project was able to retain the participation of households who would have otherwise fallen by the wayside. Importantly, the retention of such households was achieved by spending relatively small amounts of money. The key factor was in staff taking the time to understand the barriers facing each individual household and creatively seeking out ways that would remove that barrier. The extra time and effort spent in recruiting and retaining the participation of vulnerable, hard-to-reach households was also necessary when securing gas connections for hard-to-connect properties, especially where legal complications can arise when having to seek permission to work on private land, for example. Challenges were encountered with regards to identifying whether a household had a meter point reference number, or MPRN, as well as in securing a timely gas meter installation. In this instance, for example, a company called Citrus Energy was identified who, as part of their energy advice and switching service, are able to secure first-time gas meter installations by comparing deals and installation timeframes between different suppliers. This secured a turnaround time of 10 days instead of 3 months to get gas meters fitted. The team were furthermore enabled to identify official minimum energy efficiency installation quality standards, and so produced an installation checklist that installers had to use to ensure works were carried out to the highest of standards, with appropriate quality assurance checks and visits then being carried out. It was also important to work with installers who understood or were able to be flexible in relation to the vulnerabilities of households. Our report sets out a number of both practical and policy-based recommendations to facilitate and enable the replication of the delivery pathways identified during the Connecting Homes for Health pilot scheme. Details of all the recommendations that we are making can be found in both the full report and executive summary. So that brings me to the end of a somewhat whirlwind tour of the project. If you're interested in finding out more, please visit the project page on NEA's website. You can also email NEA's research or policy manager using the addresses shown on screen. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. One of the lovely things I like about being, I don't like being a chair of Fuel Poverty Forum. I much prefer to be on the other side, to be honest. But the nice thing about being the chair on this one is to sort of summarise a couple of things that have just been done. I just point out that there is an awful lot of information in both Matt and Jamie's presentations. This has been recorded. I think that was flagged up at the beginning of the session. Slides will be available on our website for more in-depth. I say Helen is with us today. Again, we are so pleased with this report because it shows what's needed. What I really like about this particular presentation, a lot of figures, a lot of graphs, the real life stories. How many people in this room experience or coming across their people day in, day out in situations like this? And again, with the announcement of the government this week, there's a real opportunity now for us to get this right or move it forward, particularly with vulnerable people. Matt did allude to in his presentation that he was very proud of NEA, of what they'd achieved. But I'd also like to chip in that we're also very proud of the support of organisations that are with us today who sort of submitted or supported our call for evidence and also put pressure on the government. It's the organisations in this room and other around the country that are finally pushing the government and Ofgem the right way. We haven't got it right. We know there isn't enough money out there at the moment, but we are making steps in the right direction. The hope of this report that James just, Anna says, has been published, I think, the beginning of this week, is available. And we're hoping NEA will support any other organisations wishing to use this report as evidence to put pressure on the organisations such as Bays and Ofgem. That's my bit done. I will, honestly, I promise you, I will give you the opportunity to speak when we get to the breakout session. I say this is very new to me. So we move on to now, again, Amanda's presentation from Energy Savings Trust. And again, this is more by fluke than judgment that I think these presentations are currently being linked. So we'll hand over to Amanda now. If our technical people can set us up on that one, and she's going to talk about what Energy Savings Trust are doing to support organisations going forward. Thank you.
Brilliant. Can you see the screen okay?
Yep.
Great. So hello everyone, my name is Amanda and I work for the Energy Saving Trust as part of the Energy Redress team, and actually it's really nice as an opportunity to see some of our current grantees as part of the forum, and finally putting some faces to names, which is great. So thanks for asking me to speak today. The plan basically was to go through what the scheme is for those people who don't know what it is, and then to give you the latest information on the funding that's available and finish up with some top tips for applications to the scheme. Sorry, just waiting for it to move on. There we go. So the Energy Saving Trust manages the Energy Industry Voluntary Redress Scheme, to give it its Sunday name, on behalf of Ofgem, and it collects payments from Ofgem regulated companies if they've breached rules. So therefore, we never quite know how much money is going to be coming into the pot at any time. So we do review the funding on a quarterly basis, and then we will announce the details based on what is in the pot. The scheme is only open to registered charities or housing associations that are exempt charities in England, Scotland or Wales, and organisations must have pre-registered with us prior to making an application. However, it's easy enough to register and you can just do that. It's a form on our website. Please note though that the main priority for the scheme is funding projects that support energy consumers in vulnerable situations. And if there is any different priorities for a particular round of funding, we would let people know in advance. In terms of what we can fund, it is either capital or revenue funding. It can be up to 100% of the project cost. And projects can only last a maximum of 24 months. And when we review the funding pot each quarter, we set a minimum and a maximum amount level, and do note that grants are paid quarterly in arrears, which is quite important, especially for sort of smaller charities. That's quite a lot of time to have gone without funding coming in. So do be aware of that. And just a quick note there on what we can't fund. We can't fund any activity that would benefit Ofgem related companies. For example, measures that are covered by the energy company obligation, renewable heat incentive, or direct referrals into supplier obligation, such as warm homes discount or the priority services register. However, we are very aware that they're important parts of energy advice, so you can raise awareness of the schemes. It's just the referrals into can't be funded by energy redress. And of course, latest information as of yesterday, we are going to have a look at the recent announcements that were said yesterday to see how that possibly would affect some of the rules around the scheme, particularly around sort of some of the measures that have recently been announced. So we'll be getting information out about that as soon as we can. So we have just announced the details for round 8 this week. So as you can see, we opened it on the 7th and it closes at 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 30th of July. It does include 2 funds this time. So a small grant fund of £500,000. And we're looking for projects between a minimum of £20,000 and just under £50,000. There's also a main fund grant, which has 6.5 million in the pot, and we're looking for projects between 50,000 and £1 million. For those who are familiar with the scheme, there is no innovation pot this time. But there is plans for it to come back in future rounds. And again, like I said, we do always highlight when there are particular priorities, but the 2 pots this time are for supporting energy consumers in vulnerable situations. We've also recently launched a new fund working with Ofgem as a response to the recent pandemic, which is the Crisis Fund. And that was developed to support prepayment customers who are either disconnected or at risk of disconnection as a result of COVID. And that doesn't mean that they have to have had the virus, but of course just affected in some way, whether that is their income has been reduced due to being put on furlough, or that they have lost their job. Whatever it is, but just has been affected by COVID. The fund will cover the cost of the vouchers themselves, the administration charge of the voucher provider, as well as money for the organisation's time and effort to administer the scheme, which can be up to 15% of the total cost of the vouchers themselves. We are asking organisations to go with an independent fuel voucher provider, of which there are several out there, as opposed to going direct to an energy company, because obviously that would exclude some of the households that you were trying to support. There is £6 million in the pot, and we are looking for projects with a minimum of £20,000 and up to a maximum of £300,000. You are able to apply to both of the, or one of the main funds or small funds, as well as the crisis pot. And the priority, like we said, is to support prepayment customers. We have just launched round 3 of the crisis fund, and the same rules do apply. You must be a charity or an exempt housing association, and you must be registered already with the redress scheme, which you can do on our website. So do note as well that with the crisis funds, that we are looking for those vouchers to go out within a 3-month period. And of course, if you have managed to get rid of all of the vouchers in that period of time, you will be able to make a further application to the crisis fund on the proviso that there is still money left in the pot. But we will keep running these rounds until the money has gone. So just as a bit of some help and some advice around if you are thinking about applying to this scheme, the vast majority of applications we do receive are to provide energy advice, which is a really positive thing. There is lots of people out there who need support, and a lot of organisations out there who are doing some really great work to help them. But do bear it in mind that it is, upwards of 90% of the applications we get are around energy advice. So do have a think and maybe think around how you could stand out from the crowd. Is there any gaps in provision? Are there particular target groups that you want to support? Some of the things that we are looking at are sort of high quality advice. We really want to see that advisors and potentially volunteers, if you've got them involved, are well trained. So perhaps do have a look at the City and Guilds NEA level 3 around home energy awareness as you know, a sort of industry standard around supporting people. So you know, things like that, training, that can all be included as part of the budget for the application. So do have a look at how you can best sort of train up your advisors. Also look at tailoring the project and the advice that you're going to provide to your intended audience. And we are looking for advice that is going to make a real difference to somebody that's really going to lead to like sustainable change for your clients. Leaflets have their place, but we are really looking for sort of in-depth advice to people that's really going to make a difference and move them out of fuel poverty. If as part of the project you're looking to provide, you want small measures such as LED bulbs or draft proofing, do have a real good think through about how you'll decide who gets them. How will you ensure that they're going to be installed safely and to the relevant standards? As we do feel that there's little point in sort of giving out LED bulbs or radiator panels to events, or if they are just going to sit in a cupboard, we'd like to know that they're actually going to be installed and used and are making a difference. And do think about as well how you're going to buy them. If you're going to be bulk buying, can you make sure that you know, get a good price for the measures that you're looking at? A few of the projects that we get as well do include small crisis funds, and if you are thinking about including one of those, key things to think about are, do make sure that within the application it is clear the processes for allocating the crisis funds, what the eligibility criteria is, and if it is a crisis fund, you know, what is being given alongside the emergency fund to provide more sort of long-term sustainable support. And in terms of some sort of top tips that I could give if you were thinking about applying to either this round or a future round, do read the guidance and feedback documents that we provide. They are on the website and there is a link there, so you'll be able to get that from once the slides have been made available. They were designed to support you, and what we would recommend is actually get the guidance document out and have that beside you as you're filling in the application form, because it will really help you tick all the boxes that we'd like you to. And a key thing that we would like to highlight is that we know that there's a lot of good work that's been going on for many, many years in the area, lots of really good organisations, and we are not looking to sort of duplicate or for projects to sort of take over in an area. So we really like to see lots of joined up working. So we're thinking collaboration, not competition. So maybe look at, do some research what's happening in your local area. It could be, you know, organisations that are just slightly out of maybe the fuel poverty agenda, looking at more well-being or health, and look at partnership bids. They always go down really well. And if you're the lead organisation for a project, then, you know, get these partnerships in place, describe within the application how they're going to work together around referrals, and letters of support always go down really well with the panel, just to show that you've been speaking and you've got these partnerships in place. Also, if you are looking to submit an application, do consider the implications of COVID on projects. As we know, the effects are likely to last a lot longer than maybe we're thinking, and this winter may be particularly difficult. So do have a think about how that's going to impact on the project that you want to run, and that you have mitigation in place, or that you understand that maybe you're going to have to do the project in a slightly different way initially, but hopefully towards the end of the project things will get back to a little bit of normality. And this is a bit of a whistle-top tour around the redress scheme. So do note that we did run a series of webinars recently. So one was around an introduction to the scheme, and another one was sort of best practice around sort of energy advice schemes. And they again were recorded, so you can go back and have a look and replay those and get any further tips and information on the scheme, and the link again is on the presentation, so do have a listen. And although I am more than happy to sort of take questions, and I know you can add them to the comments, and I can take those at the end. When Jimmy mentions towards the end of the session. If you've got questions that come up later on, or you do want to talk to us about a particular project that you're interested in, there's our contact details. So mine, I tend to look after the sort of more northern projects and Scottish projects, as I'm based in the northeast, and my colleague Katie, who is down in Cornwall. There's our contact details. Please do get in touch. We have a team email, so feel free to have a look, send an email to that. One of the team will always be checking on that and pick that up. And of course, do follow us on social media, because that is where we sort of tend to post all of our latest news. But yeah, I just wanted to say good luck if anybody is planning an application to this or a future round. And thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely to be part of the forum, and I'm looking forward to the workshops coming up.
Amanda, thanks a lot for that. Again, it's to me, and again, I would say this because I put this thing together. The timings have been really good for me personally, with the announcement of the government and obviously Energy Savings Trust. Anyone pick up on the 2 C words? No? We'll come back to that. So again, what we're going to now do is go swiftly to Suzanne Barningham from the manager, Energy Works. Am I right on that one? Again, as I said earlier on in the session, we've given 3 questions to Suzanne. We're not able to, for some reason, put the questions up in the breakout rooms, but again, we've kept it as simple as possible. So again, Suzanne's brief is, or has been, the main challenges for their organisation over the last 3 to 4 months. Have they come across anything that works in helping vulnerable customers? Anything NEA can do best for us? I say we'll pick that up in the workshop. So just bear in mind, again, Suzanne hopefully will give a greater understanding of how as an individual organisation you're able to cope or deal with this current situation. So Suzanne, if you want to take yourself off mute and go for it. There is the option on this thing of putting full screen on. I did mention it to Suzanne, but she's not keen on it. I don't know why. Suzanne, over to you, please. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne. I'm the Energy Works Manager at Groundwork at Greater Manchester. There's a few of my colleagues on here from other groundwork trusts and also from local authorities and other places I work with, and obviously Carol from United. I can't see everybody. That's frustrating, but never mind. So Jimmy emailed me a couple of weeks ago and said, you're doing this, so this is what I'm doing today. Now, I don't do slides because I try and make sure that my workload is as less as possible, so I try not to do slides. So Jimmy's gave me a brief of, first question is, what are the main challenges that your organisation face? Now, what I don't want to do is preach to the choir here, but I think I've got a list here of the challenges that we've faced. Now, they go from energy companies, referrals, customer trust, safeguarding, changing from a face-to-face service to a telephone service, and working at reduced capacity. So there's quite a number of things that we've had to face. We've had to change completely the way that we're working. The projects that we had in place prior have come just to a standstill. So we've had to go out and find additional funding. So then it's setting it all up in the background and figuring out what we're going to do. So the second question was, do you have any best practice that you can share with regards to your response to the pandemic? So what I'm going to do is a bit of a tit for tat. So I'll tell you what we've done, the issues that we've faced and how we've kind of come about that. But there are always people who can give us better examples and better ideas. So if you have them, please share, because I'll steal them. Okay, so first of all, energy companies. So previously we were working face-to-face with customers. So if we need to contact an energy company, we are working with that energy company directly with the customer sat next to us. So they're giving the permissions, they can put us on their account. That isn't the case anymore. What we've found is some of the energy companies are great. So we'll ring up and say, we need to speak on behalf of this person. Can you ring that customer and get us put on the account? And they will do that quite a number of times. There are a number of customer services representatives from these energy companies that just say, I'm not ringing the customer. Tell the customer to ring us. Sometimes the customer isn't able to due to no credit, because they're not great on a phone. They get really confused over all the different options that they've got to pick, and then they don't know what they're saying when they've actually got through to a person after waiting for an hour on hold. So the way we've combated that is a couple of ways: is put the phone down and ring back and keep ringing back until you'll get somebody who will actually ring the customer. Or when you do find somebody within that energy company who's actually really good and a very good customer service representative, we get their email, we get the phone number, and we bombard them. And then we take that up a step to their management to say, look, this needs to happen across the area. Julie's just put on there that they have three-way conversations. Not everybody's actually set up to do that. So what we've had to do is we've had to buy in a telephone service that I am still trying to figure out how it works, but then we'll bring it in where we can do three-way telephone conversations with the energy company as well. We just don't have the technology for that at this second, but hopefully we will within the next week or so. And I have been saying that for a few weeks, to be fair. Where also one of the big problems we've faced is that the energy companies will not set up a direct debit at all unless the customer is with us. Now, we're not going into people's houses at the moment, so we can't set up that direct debit, so it's actually proving quite difficult. So I always say this at these places is there's an assumption that everyone's got access to the internet or access to a smartphone, and they just don't. So to set up a direct debit online isn't an option for some customers. So when we're going through a conversation with a customer, we can do the U-switch with the customer. We don't always feel comfortable with that because we're asking for their bank details to set up that direct debit. But we are doing that for a customer if customers feel that they can't do it themselves. There has been a massive delay on meter installs for smart meters and smart meters and also prepayment meters from credit meters. So there's been huge delays, which has then put more people in more debt, which has caused more frustrations for the customer. And there's been a real enforcement. This isn't due to COVID, but this is just as a standard practice. There's a real enforcement out there of smart prepayment meters. Not everybody wants a smart prepayment meter. And that is quite frustrating for that customer. I have mentioned before, we had a customer who actually tried to take her own life because she was having a smart prepayment meter forced upon her, and it's just not acceptable. There's the additional £50 credits that are being put on people's smart prepayment meters. I'm sure you've all come across this, but the customer isn't aware that that's not a grant, that's actually got to be paid back. People aren't aware of that at all. So they're using this £50, using the rest of the money to pay for whatever, and then going, oh my goodness, I've got to pay all this back or I can't go on supply. 50 quid to get rid of the emergency credit, and then also another tenner to get back on supply. It may as well be £1 million to some people, they just don't have it. So we've been really lucky where we've actually won the COVID crisis fund through Amanda. We've won that round, so we've actually been able to support a lot of people through that. So what we're not doing is we're not just throwing a voucher at it and putting a plaster on it. We won't do that. There's a lot of questions that we go through. There's a lot of people that There's a few on here actually. Daniel, I'll mention you because Daniel does do a lot with us as well, who are referring into the project. So Daniel and his team actually are already taking on that debt with that customer, and they're already working with that customer. But to support that customer so they can get back on supply, Daniel will then contact us and ask us if we can support him and his customer, so we will do. Separate to that, for those referrers that aren't actually dealing with any energy debt, we will work with that customer. We won't offer them a voucher straight away. We go through, we figure out what the issue is. Then if we feel that actually a voucher will benefit the customer, we'll give it to them. But then we will continue that support with that customer. We don't just then go, there you go, there's your voucher, yeah, you deserve it, and then we'll crack on. We do go back to that customer quite regularly. There's also with the energy companies, they are sending out preloaded cards and keys. What customers, again, don't realise is that money has to be paid back, which is putting people in so much debt, and we don't know when the end of this is going to be. So we need to look at how we can support them, what's happened, what's changed, are all the right benefits in place, are they getting what they deserve, to be honest, and most of the time, no, they're not, so we're supporting them with that as well. With the change in what we've had to do with everything because of COVID, we've actually got we've been quite lucky where we've got 8 contracts within the last few months that we're trying to manage. So that fits in with what Amanda said previously. We now have money to be able to support them customers through separate funding pots. So referrals are quite difficult. We're quite used to going out to team meetings, going out to events, social activities, whatever it is, we're used to going out to there. Carol is usually my wing girl on things like that, aren't you, Carol? And we go out and we do loads in the community. Now, we're not able to do that at the moment, which is quite difficult because community events, we've done a mapping process where we've been to a team meeting or we've been to a community event, and then you map where the referrals are and they sit right on top. So they are really, really great to get your referrals in. We don't have that at the moment. With a lot of companies, a lot of agencies, local authorities, they're actually changing the job title of some of the staff. So whereas some of the staff, I mean, I'm dealing with a lovely lady who used to work in a library, but now she's on the COVID hub for a local authority. She wouldn't be able to access the same people as she previously would. So what we're doing, it's social media, it's getting on Facebook, Twitter, just whacking it out there, going into little community groups and seeing if we can get our information out there. Also emails, I'm sure people are sick to death of getting an email from me, to be quite honest, but you've got to keep reminding people that we are there. There's very much focus on food and medication, which absolutely there should be, but I think energy is forgotten a little bit. And I think as time is passing and people are realising, actually, I can't pay that bill, then energy comes back into the forefront. And that's when I think within the last month, our referrals have shot through the roof from the hubs and places like that. Customer trust. We tend to trust people more face-to-face. You tend to look at somebody and you decide whether you trust them or not, don't you? Through body language and whatnot. Over the phone, it's a bit more difficult. There's a lot of scams going about at the moment, so people don't know who to trust, when to trust, which website to trust, what's going on. They don't know. So to actually build that trust with the customer, what we're finding is it's taking a lot longer to build the trust with the customer. So when you're trying to do that and build that trust with a customer, what you would do, where you would go through a scripted thing where you're asking your questions and you sat in front of them saying, right, now with this question we need to ask this, and you're explaining it as you go along. You haven't got that through a phone, so you become a chameleon. You actually start talking to customers, not in a scripted way, but you start to talk to customers as a general conversation. But what you're doing is you're guiding that conversation to get your answers without the customers actually really knowing that they're answering these questions, because it can be too stressful for them over the phone. So you can do an analysis of what you're supposed to do. You can get all your information through that you need for your funders just by having just a general chat that isn't scripted. Obviously, GDPR is an issue. With our new phone lines, we do actually have them recorded, so we are doing the GDPR as well. Simon's just put some up, which is really relevant, and I will come back to that. So, and now, Simon, you made me lose my train of thought. So, anyway, so customer trust, yeah. So what we're doing is we're finding that the telephone conversations are not 40 minutes long. They're not. They can be an hour and a half. It could be 4, 5, 6 telephone calls with this customer just to get the basic information from them so you can actually support that customer. I think with some of the funding pots that we've got is people tend to think that a telephone call is much easier than a face-to-face visit. If there are any funders, which I know you are, Amanda, but the telephone calls are not easier at all. Oh, is my 10 minutes up already, Jimmy?
That was just between you and me, that, Suzanne, yeah?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that's private. Do you want to take it into the breakout room?
Yeah, sure.
I promise you we will feed this back in our last session, if that's okay. Suzanne, thanks for that. I'm so sorry for cutting you off. You know I normally let you go on and on and on because of your enthusiasm. But again, the idea behind asking Suzanne to talk was to give you a flavour of what we're hoping that will come out of the workshops. So hopefully Nina is now going to set me up so I can break. You will be getting broken out. We're going to have 6 breakout rooms because of the amount of people. So there's going to be about 7 or 8 people. If there is not I was expecting a lot more NEA colleagues on this today. If there's not an NEA colleague in your particular breakout group, can someone volunteer or be volunteered to take a few comments to feedback in the last session? Is that okay? Again, I will open it up when we come back. We'll have about 20 minutes. This is where you can have your virtual cup of coffee or cup of tea. And then we'll go into the workshops will be ready for you to go into. Just a couple of comments on the feedback. I'm guessing that some of them, because Suzanne's already touched on a few, and I'm just having a look at a few of the comments. Hopefully, a lot of the breakouts will be saying the same things, and then I will give you the opportunity to chip in, open the mics or unmute you to be able to jump in and pass any comments or further information you wish. Is that okay? So hopefully, Nina is going to now make me a host. I will go out, you will go out into the breakout rooms. I think you will be given a 1-minute warning before you return to the main room, if that's okay. Welcome back, everyone. Right, so what we're going to do, hopefully what we're going to do now is we'll do a feedback. Just a couple of comments that I picked up on the chat bit. Daniel Johnson from Stockport Homes. Online chat, again, it's something that I use quite regularly, actually, doing frontline work now, and do find that it works really well. Simon Kilshaw, again, made the comments about utility with the warm home discount. And again, we have heard a whisper that energy companies are going to go quite early on opening their schemes. Now, how we address the utility problem, I don't know. So hopefully, right, so I'll just have to ask Nina, how does everyone unmute themselves? Do they just do that themselves?
They just do it themselves, yeah. I can't unmute all, but they can unmute themselves if they want to speak.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is sort of go through the breakout rooms. Hopefully there was a nominated person within each breakout room. Just a couple of comments on what you discussed, if that's okay. And again, on the chat function, you can share your details or further information with anyone who's in the forum today. So we're going to open it up now. If anyone wants to ask a question outside of the breakout, on the participants on the bottom toolbar there's a wave hand. Everyone got that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll start off in breakout room 1. If you want to unmute yourselves, and I'll say whoever was who was taking the comments from breakout room 1.
How would we know what breakout room number we were?
You don't know what room number you were?
We were number 4.
Oh, were we?
4.
No worries. Any offers from breakout room 1? Nope. Breakout room 2?
Yeah. Hi, Jimmy.
Go ahead, Joe. Just a couple of feedback from it.
Yeah. Well, Dominic came up with something. We were talking about how to sort of reach community groups and frontline workers and so on. And he suggested that he'd created a presentation on Google Classroom that had been really successful and had people. So I think that's you know, something worth thinking about. And then just, I mean, practical difficulties. A lot of people have got half of the colleagues furloughed, so they're only at 50% capacity. And so, like, for example, it's sort of general funding. It's if it's for a telephone client, it's £100, 250 for a home visit, but you're actually spending 2 or 3 times as long on the telephone. So the telephone's costing more than a home visit at the moment.
Yeah, it's something that NEA have looked at. I know we've put together webinars and training courses through Zoom. We are looking at potentially reaching smaller community groups who've set up either Facebook or Zoom meetings. Is a way of doing it. But yeah, again, so Google Classroom with the presentation, and again, what we're very conscious of, it's a new area, so it's a shorter it has to be a very much shorter presentation, and we're looking at where usually we do presentations to householders of about 10 or 15. We're now looking at anything between 5 and 10. We're definitely not going over the 10 to make sure everyone's included on that one. So thanks for that, Tom. Anything else, Joe?
No, that's it from us.
Okay. Can we go back to breakout 1 with Andy?
Yes, sorry about that. Couldn't get there in time. I sort of took it over a little bit, and we talked about eco and the difficulties of getting to the right people, and we all expressed sort of concerns that the people that are in fuel poverty, you know, don't come forward, and if they are approached, they don't know what they're signing up for, and it's local authorities they seem to be key, but obviously don't have the support. And I think during the lockdown, people are even more unlikely to open the door to people, and obviously rightly so. They're not trusting. So it's difficult for it's difficult for people in fuel poverty to actually access the funds that are available. So.
Yeah, I think that has been a problem anyway. It's an ongoing problem now with eco anyway, isn't it?
It is, but it's made it worse. I mean, it's also had the issue of get people not being able to. They want, some companies have been working in sort of smaller numbers, yeah. But I don't know if anybody else is the same, but I'm not convinced I wouldn't want anybody coming into 3 months ago. Want somebody coming into my house to fit a boiler, unless my boiler were not working. So. Yeah, real set of people in Blackburn. Yeah,
it's an interesting point because Suzanne raised it in her talk about sort of being able to act, sitting with the meters. Again, we've got real problems with. I've encountered a few cases on mine where we're trying to get a switch on a meter, and again, because of safety issues with regard to their employees, because energy companies have a duty of care to their employees. And we're hoping that they're going to start opening up and doing that. Joe, you want to chip in? Unmute yourself. Joe Boswell?
No, I didn't want to chip in.
Oh, sorry, there's a hand there. Okay, sorry. On. It's okay, no worries. This was always going to happen on this one. Breakout 3. A spokesperson for breakout 3? No? This is going really well, isn't it? We'll move swiftly on to breakout room 4 then.
Hi Jimmy, it's Christina.
Hi, Christina.
I made some notes while we were talking, so I got nominated to speak. We the questions you raised were what were the challenges, any best practice, and how can NEA support better. So we mainly focused on the challenges, but we can add a bit to the other two as well. So
well, challenges, I think challenges is the main priority, Christine.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that.
So we've mainly focused on the challenges of kind of liaison with residents, really. So about losing that personal touch that you have when someone's home, how we could, and also about collecting information, support and evidence like proof of attendance allowance, stuff like that. Is what we found were the challenges were. Some best practice that some people in the group have been using to get over these barriers was the freeway call, but that was also a challenge as well, because some people in the group could do it and some people couldn't, and also how people speak to people on the phone, trying to make them feel at ease, because they obviously haven't got that face-to-face contact. With regards to collecting the evidence, people were saying that they were either getting people to photograph it if they had the technology and WhatsApp it to them possibly, or email it to them. Or some people were lucky enough to still have the odd person going into the office and being able to pick up posts and scan it in and email it out if people weren't on WhatsApp or didn't have email. And one of the people in the group said that they've been quite successful getting medical evidence off GPs, right, because they are aware of the current situation, and they've been quite professional about that and shared that. And they've also said that obviously when we're dealing with people, a lot of the time we're not the only party involved, so there are other professionals that might already have that evidence that we need, that with the consent of the resident, can share it to break down that barrier. And I think the way that NEA can possibly support better is just the problem we're having with the suppliers at the moment. The suppliers have to realise that, we're not sitting in people's homes, so we can't, get the consent off them there and then, and how they can change their policy slightly to let us speak on residents' behalf when we're not necessarily sitting next to them.
Yeah, we're slightly disappointed on this one actually, because our policy team are all over this one and trying to get energy companies to relax their approach in a little bit. The days or Ofgem announced something that what they were supposed to do, but I think everyone in the room, it's okay putting it out there on paper. Sometimes in practice it doesn't work and it's very hit and miss. But yet, and again, what we have to realise, we are still facing challenges, not only because of sort of the householders, but organisations are still under furlough and working under difficult situations. But I say the online chat is a good one. Again, what I've found personally dealing with people, I've touched quite lucky with a few of them, so they're quite clever on the smartphones and photocopying evidence that's required. And I'm really pleased to hear about the GP comment actually, because there was a comment on the chat earlier on this morning about saying that GPs still haven't really woke up to the fact that they need supporting. Now you're saying something different, and we can get the likes of GPs on board. It makes things easier. And again, you just raised the point is that the phone sort of interview or discussion is the main way to do things at the moment. But again, it goes all against, I mean, if you go back to Jamie's research report, we need, the way things work is more face-to-face. Now, how we do that, I do not know. Nikki Scott?
Yeah, so it was me that's been working with the GPs and getting them to email it over. So things like the medical summary, that's kind of usually all you need to show like proof of diagnosis and things like that. And the GPs in especially Carlisle and that have been really, really good. So we just contact them, and then what they're tending to do is they phone the patients directly just to check it's okay to send it to us, and then they can just email it straight over.
Lovely.
So yeah, it works. Yeah, so ask, and worst I can do is say no.
It is, if you don't ask, you don't get type of thing. But I say I'm very disappointed in sort of any suppliers I've experienced what everyone else has experienced in the room. It is very hit and missed. couple of energy companies that have surprised me and actually picked up the phone to me on a number of occasions now. But again, unfortunately, other energy companies just basically ignore you completely. But I will, we are intending on we're doing around the forums, these comments. Our policy group is feeding. We have regular meetings with Ofgem and Bays at the moment. We will be feeding these issues. We already have sort of touched on with them, is please get the energy companies to loosen up a bit. At the end of the day, the people in this room are trying to help householders, but they're also trying to help energy companies here to solve. And again, what we have to understand, energy companies are in the same position as us. They are working sort of a limited capacity. I don't think there's a solution to this, unfortunately, but we will put as much pressure on from our end to Bays and Ofgem on the comments that we're going to get back from the fuel poverty forums. Breakout 5.
I think that was us. So yeah, a lot of ours has kind of been covered already. So we talked about the challenges of the home visits or lack of, and how we've kind of transitioned into telephone visits. We chatted about eco and kind of the need to remobilise the supply chain, which is tricky because obviously some people are still furloughed, so the need to be a bit more flexible and making sure that we kind of understand what's happening with targets and when they need to be fulfilled. And then we kind of just started chatting about yesterday's announcement and kind of the stuff that we might need to know, so a bit more about the eligibility criteria and kind of what types of measures that will and won't cover.
Yeah, it's interesting that comments actually, because again, Andy's already touched on it with the eco. And again, I think, again, most of the people in the room who've dealt with eco, one of the sort of downsides is the hoops that you have to jump through, particularly with eligibility. And again, Matt mentioned in his presentation, yes, the government over these last 3 months, have to be careful how I phrase this one, are very, very good at making announcements on a particular day and detail. There is a lack of detail. So again, obviously we will be watching for further detail on how this funding is going to be administered. We will hope, if we put enough pressure on not only ourselves but all the other organisations in the country, that again, we'll take a lot more relaxed approach to this on eligibility criteria. But again, that's very much in sort of wait and see at the moment, because the government is still going to announce further detail. We will get it out to you in some way, shape or form. The thing that Simon picked up on the utility with the warm home discount, I've already said it. We've heard a whisper that energy companies are going to go early on their warm home discount schemes. But we've got, I think we've assigned one of our colleagues to monitor that as to when they're opening. Again, NEA will share that with everyone as soon as possible. But yeah, utility are going to present a real sort of difficulty, because even over the last couple of years, I think they open for a week, don't they? And they're no sooner open than they're closed. So again, it's something that we are aware of, and that we'll have to do. Yeah, Dan's just sat around and said, yes, it is going to be a lot more competitive for the warm home discount scheme, because as we currently stand, there's potential for a whole lot more people to qualify for it this year. I mean, one of the good things, it has been extended. Again, we will have to keep an eye on that one. Joe Boswell's just said utilities are looking to open their warm home discount between the 5th and 12th of August. So again, that does give us opportunities, organisations, to try and sort of spread the word in whatever shape or form we can to people to make them aware. I've already got them in my diary, clients in my diary who are utility customers, and I promised them I'm coming back to them as soon as I'm aware. Breakout room 6.
Yeah, I offered to take some notes. I mean, the time just flew by, but just wanted to, yeah. I think the key things were just saying the difficulty getting through on the phone, and even once you've got through on the phone, actually trying to resolve anything in a decent amount of time is really difficult, because you've got energy advisors from the energy companies also at home, who are then having to check with managers online, which is just so. And as a funder, I just wanted to sort of reiterate that actually, from what Suzanne said and what we were talking about in the group, I've taken that on board. We were aware that phone calls are taking a lot longer and therefore costing a lot more money to sort of provide, and I have taken that on board. I will feed that back, but yeah, we are aware of that. Solutions, one good thing that we're saying was, you know, just make sure that you're prepping the clients really well before you go onto a conference call, and making sure that they're aware of what's going to happen, and things like that. And perseverance was also mentioned, to just try and keep going. And in terms of NEA help, they just said, please keep doing what you're doing. You know, and you mentioned there about sort of getting the dates out for Warm Homes discount. That's really important, isn't it? You know, you can we're all keep checking on, you know, the energy companies' social medias, but if we know somebody's checking on that and can get that information out to everybody,
yeah,
that's
it's something,
a really positive thing.
Under the warm home discounts, I think we've got 10, 15 project development coordinators, which are similar to me. So we're frontline workers now. And it was something that we kept a very close eye on. So we had a running sheet on when they were opening, when they were likely to close. But I think, having spoken to you today, I'll take that back, and I'll make sure that at least in the Northwest, I will feed that to you on that one. Andy, sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. Further detail on this £2 billion scheme in the next hour? No, because Matt was out celebrating last night. Good luck with that one. Sarah? Ian? Yes, Sarah. Ian have already opened the registration on Warm Home discount. So I will get my finger pulled out and sort of keep an eye on this one. But they've opened already. And again, one of the comments in the chat is it will be a lot more competitive. I know Utility, I think, open and close within a day or two. They fill their quota. And the bigger ones, British Gas, EDF, tend to sort of open a lot longer. Joe Boswell, text registration for British Gas is open. Suzanne, Utility Warehouse. I will make it a point to sort of look into the Warm Home discount, especially if they're opening. And I know what they did last year was like a pre-register. But again, the pre-register gets you in there with the opportunity. So again, we'll keep an eye on that one for you. So that's all the breakout rooms done, yeah? They've all been done, haven't they? If there's anyone who wishes, or we've missed anything, or wishes to sort of give us any sort of further update or information on their own organisation, please put your hands up and unmute yourself, and we'll take questions from the room. No? We've answered everyone's questions. Okay, well, this is going... Top right-hand corner.
I'm losing the plot, I've told you.
Right, good.
Right, so if they're opening the applications for Warm Homes discount early, does that mean that they will receive payment early or not?
No. I wouldn't have thought so. Mind you, and we haven't confirmed this, one of our colleagues had quite very strange conversation with an energy company. We are checking it out as we speak, actually, in this particular energy company is offered to top up a prepayment to £60, and they will take it off their Warm Home discount entitlement, which hasn't even been open to registration yet. Our concerns about that is that then means, the way I've read it, is that that person is then committed or stuck with that energy supplier. Now, whether energy suppliers will do this as a matter of course, we're not sure yet. But we've come across one particular case that we're looking into, where the offer is, you know, where you mentioned about the top-ups, where a lot of people, and I experienced it with the organisations I work with, certainly the family groups, the way energy companies sort of put that out was, don't worry about it, we're topping up your meter by £50. They thought they were getting a grant of some sort. They were not informed that it was a loan and that they were a repair. Again, what we're finding with a couple of energy suppliers, they're refusing a further top-up if they're going off supply because they haven't cleared the previous loan on it. Yeah. Again, it's something we've raised with our policy. So in answer to your question, we don't know. I'd say looking at the chat, there's quite a few are opening for registration. It's unlikely that they will pay warm home discount earlier than what they done, because when they first started warm home discount, energy companies were paying, I think, September, October, and they soon realised, because advisors out there were quite cute, get the warm home discount and switch you to another supplier. So I've found over the last few years that any suppliers have left it till sort of very late in February, March to pay warm home discount, and that sort of restricts the householder switching to an energy supplier. So I think, in answer to your question, Suzanne, I don't think they're going to be paying warm home discounts out a lot earlier, because again, it's not confirmed.
Can I just jump in and say that I had a customer that had a similar where they'd asked because she needed emergency credit. We'd already given her our because we've got vouchers for top up, and I asked her to contact her supplier, and she said that they offered her an emergency top up, but it would be that she wouldn't get her warm discount if she accepted it.
No.
So I told her not to bother. And now I've since learned about the NEA top-up vouchers, so I'll probably be pointing her in that direction because she's clearly vulnerable.
I am coming back to you. I did promise you, I think, at last week's one. We're just waiting something back from our comms team on this.
We've just seen something on Facebook where it was shared on Facebook about NEA vouchers.
Right, okay. Well, we're part of the Energy Savings Trust team. I think Suzanne's on it. I think, Dom, you're on it as well, aren't you? Energy Projects Plus. So we have, I know of 3 organisations in the Northwest area that we can sort of, the likes of organisations like yourselves can come to the likes of NEA, certainly Suzanne in the Greater Manchester area. And I think, Dom, you cover Merseyside and Cheshire?
But we're national.
Right, so national, you can come to us on that one, because we're covering ours nationally. So
okay, thanks.
That's a good thing. But yet the warm home discount, again, certainly what I've heard today from yourself and Suzanne and my own experience, I think we will be taking it up with our policy team on that one. Again, Andrea Wood, as she's put in the chat here, on customers sent a key card preloaded with £150, which is very good. But again, the message to the customers from their energy companies, there was a lot of assumption that it was a grant and that they weren't paying it back. Again, they've had to pay, the young customer will have had to pay that £150. I've had a couple of experiences where energy companies are refusing a further top up, so there is risk of self-disconnection with individuals until they pay that first loan back. Sorry, support from the energy companies in this crisis, it's called, isn't it? So on this loan, they've got to pay. Again, I've had a couple of instances where the loan has to be paid back before the energy supplier will provide an additional top-up loan. But the danger of that is that that particular household is then likely to disconnect. And this is why the Energy Savings Trust is a godsend at the moment, because it's going to address issues like this one. So yeah, please use NEA, as say Suzanne in Greater Manchester, Dom Griffith from Energy Project Plus can cover Merseyside and Cheshire. I think what you have to be careful of on this one, I think, is that you can't tap into all 3 of us because we're under the same funding stream. But again, we do have other funds coming on board in the near future with regard to crisis funds, which is separate from Energy Savings Trust. Again, you will be informed of that. as to whether, and we think you will be able to apply because it's a separate fund from the Energy Savings Trust. But I'll keep you up to speed on that one. Any more questions? No. Oh, there's always one.
The energy vouchers. Now, you mentioned it in different areas. Is there any support for it in Cumbria? So who would I go to?
Again, pick up with, speak to Amanda on that one, because she'll obviously have a list of organisations, and I think we got a list of the organisations actually. And I think
we sent out a list to all of the redress registered charities who was successful in the first round. But we can, please do get in touch with me if you're wondering about how to get hold of vouchers.
Will do, thank you.
Nikki, with Carlisle, again, because NEA's one is national, we should be able to cover that.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
On that one.
Yeah.
Right. I sound like an auctioneer, you know, before you... one more. Any more questions? Oh, good. And this is a first ever, because I usually, those who attend these fuel policy forums know that we run over by about 15. We have to dip into about 10 or 15 minutes of our lunch break. So sorry about there's no lunch break. So we're only about 4 minutes over. All it leaves me to say is thank you so much for coming. We do hope it's worth. Obviously, we're not doing evaluation on this like we do in the real world. But again, any comments, whether positive or negative, whether it has worked for you or there's something we're not doing quite right on it, please do it. Please get in touch with me direct and I'll take it on board. I am hoping that the next fuel policy forum will be done in the real world. However, I said earlier on at the beginning of this session, what's really pleased me about this is that there's organisations that have been able to join this forum that have not been able to. I think Nikki's nodding her head, certainly way up in Carlisle, was never going to get to us here in Manchester. But I think, to be honest, I think NEA are looking at this quite seriously. And when we do finally get back into the real world, we will go back to the good old days. But I think we are likely to look at something of trying to sort of engage or allow other organisations to get involved in all of this. So again, thank you so much for that. Keep up the good work as always. Again, if you wish to make any comments back to us, and that's about it. You okay with that? Right, so at this point, there's, if you just go into the next room, there's tea, coffee and a lunch waiting for you. Now, whether you've been able to persuade someone in your household to do that for you, I do not know, but good luck with that. I do hope to see you in the real world next time. If not, we'll be back here same time, same place, and we'll hopefully do it a little bit better if we've got anything wrong on this today. Is that okay? Again, you have my email address. Please get in touch if there's anything that we've missed or you've not had the opportunity to get involved. Is that okay? Right,
yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye now. Bye.